Have you ever pondered who is truly responsible for the direction of your life? It's a question that, when truly considered, can lead to some profound realizations. Responsibility. It's a word we hear often, but do we truly understand what it means? It's about more than just doing your chores or showing up on time. True responsibility is about ownership, about accepting that you are the architect of your own life, and that every decision you make shapes the world you live in. In the society we live in, it's far too easy to fall into a blame culture. When things go wrong, it's tempting to point fingers, to lay the fault at someone else's door. It's the government's fault, it's my boss's fault, it's my partner's fault. But where does that leave us? In a state of powerlessness, trapped in a cycle of blame and inaction. But what if we flipped the script? What if, instead of blaming others, we took ownership? Imagine the empowerment that comes from saying, yes, this is my situation, and yes, I am the one who has the power to change it. This isn't about ignoring the influence of external factors. It's about recognizing that no matter the circumstances, we always have a choice. We can choose how we react, how we adapt, how we move forward. Responsibility isn't a burden, it's a source of power. It's the key to taking control of your life, to shaping your future in the way you want to see it. But it starts with a choice to stop blaming others and start looking inward, a choice to take the reins of your life and steer it in the direction you want to go. So I ask you again, who is truly responsible for the direction of your life? Remember, the first step to change is recognizing that the power lies within you. To illustrate the principle of responsibility, consider the story of two friends, John and Mark. Born and raised in the same neighborhood, they shared similar backgrounds and circumstances. Yet their paths diverged dramatically due to how each of them chose to respond to adversities. John, a hard-working and earnest individual, faced his fair share of setbacks. He experienced business failures, personal losses, and even battled health issues. However, he chose not to wallow in self-pity or blame the world for his circumstances. Instead, he took responsibility for his actions and decisions. He learned from his mistakes, sought help when needed, and worked diligently to improve his situation. Over time, John's life transformed. He built a successful business, nurtured fulfilling relationships, and even improved his health. His journey was not easy, but he persevered, driven by the belief that he was the architect of his own fate. On the flip side, we have Mark. Like John, Mark also faced numerous challenges. However, his approach was starkly different. Instead of taking responsibility, he blamed others for his predicaments. He pointed fingers at his parents for not providing enough, at his boss for not recognizing his talent, and at his friends for not supporting him. This blame game became a recurring theme in Mark's life. As a result, he remained stagnant, unable to break free from the cycle of disappointment and resentment. Now, let's pause for a moment and reflect on their stories. John and Mark started with similar backgrounds, faced similar adversities, yet their lives took dramatically different turns. The key difference was not in their circumstances, but in their attitudes. John took responsibility for his life, while Mark chose to blame others. This tale of two friends illustrates a profound truth. Our lives are not merely a result of our circumstances, but how we respond to them. It's about the choices we make and the responsibility we take. So remember, when faced with adversity, we have two choices: to be like John, who embraced responsibility and changed his life, or like Mark, who blamed others and remained stuck. The difference in their outcomes was the level of responsibility they took for their lives. So what does it mean to take ownership, and why does it matter? Taking ownership is more than accepting responsibility for your actions. It's about embracing every aspect of your life, the good and the bad, the success and the failures, and understanding that you are the captain of your own ship. When you take ownership, you acknowledge that your actions, decisions, and attitudes shape your life's trajectory. You realize that you have the power to influence your circumstances rather than being a passive spectator at the mercy of external factors. You see, when you take ownership, you empower yourself. You're no longer waiting for things to happen to you. Instead, you're making things happen. You're actively steering your life in the direction you want it to go. You're not just reacting to life's twists and turns, but rather proactively shaping your path. Imagine for a moment a world where everyone took ownership of their actions. A world where blame and excuses became obsolete. It's a world where growth and improvement are the norm, not the exception. Because when we take ownership, we open the door to self-improvement. We recognize our weaknesses, our mistakes, and we actively work to better ourselves. Taking ownership is not about being perfect. It's about acknowledging imperfection and having the courage to make things better. It's about saying, yes, I made a mistake, but I can learn from it and improve. It's about seeing every setback as a setup for a comeback. It's about transforming every failure into a stepping stone towards success. But remember, taking ownership doesn't mean you have to go it alone. It's okay to ask for help, to lean on others when the going gets tough. Taking ownership is about recognizing that you have the power to ask for and accept help, not about struggling alone. So, why does taking ownership matter? Because it's the key to empowerment. It's the secret to growth and improvement. It's the fuel that drives success. It's the cornerstone of a fulfilling and meaningful life. When you take ownership, you gain the power to shape your own future. But what happens when we shift the blame and avoid responsibility? Well, let's paint a picture. Imagine, if you will, a cyclist who continually blames their bike for not winning races. They say it's too heavy, the tires aren't good enough, the gears aren't smooth. The cyclist spends more time finding faults with the bike than actually training. As a result, they don't improve, they don't win races, and their self-esteem plummets. This is a prime example of the negative effects of avoiding responsibility. Instead of recognizing their own role in their lack of progress, they shift the blame to external factors. The cyclists' focus on their bicycle's perceived inadequacies prevents them from identifying and addressing their own shortcomings. Now let's take this scenario a step further. The cyclist's persistent negativity begins to seep into their everyday life. Their relationships suffer as they constantly find fault with others rather than acknowledging their own mistakes. They become a magnet for negativity, attracting and fostering an environment of blame and excuse-making. Indeed, the consequences of shifting blame and shirking responsibility are far-reaching. It's not just about failing to win a race or reach a goal, it's about the impact on one's overall well-being. Avoiding responsibility can lead to a diminished sense of self-worth, a lack of personal growth, and a negative outlook on life. Consider another example, a student who blames their low grades on their teachers. They believe they are being marked unfairly, that the questions are too difficult, or that the teacher doesn't like them. Instead of taking responsibility for their studies and seeking to improve, they deflect blame. The outcome? Their grades don't improve, their academic confidence wanes, and they become trapped in a cycle of blame and stagnation. So let's ask ourselves, is it worth it? Is it worth the loss of self-esteem, the lack of progress, the increased negativity? The answer is clear. Avoiding responsibility only leads to stagnation and disappointment. It's a path that promises no growth, no achievement, and ultimately, no satisfaction. Avoiding responsibility only leads to stagnation and disappointment. So, how can embracing responsibility lead to self-improvement? Imagine a world where you have the power to shape your own reality, where every decision you make is a step towards personal growth. This is the world you step into when you embrace responsibility. When you take responsibility for your actions, you are essentially taking control of your own life. You're no longer a passenger, but the driver of your own journey. This shift in mindset can lead to a profound sense of personal growth. You begin to understand that your actions, your decisions, have weight and consequence. And in this realization, you find a deep well of potential for self-improvement. Your confidence, too, can see a marked increase. Each time you take responsibility, you're proving to yourself that you can handle whatever life throws at you. You become more resilient, more steadfast. You learn that failures are not roadblocks, but stepping stones to success. And with each step taken, each hurdle crossed, your self-confidence grows. But it's not just about personal growth and confidence. Embracing responsibility can also lead to improved life satisfaction. When you take charge of your actions, you find you're less prone to regret. You made a choice, you owned it, and you learned from it. There's a certain satisfaction in that, a sense of fulfillment that's hard to find elsewhere. So how do you start taking more responsibility? Start small. Acknowledge your mistakes and learn from them. Don't shy away from difficult decisions, but face them head on. Take control of your actions, your decisions, your life. It's not an easy path, but it's one that leads to self-improvement, to growth, to fulfillment. Embracing responsibility is not just about accepting blame. It's about seizing the power to shape your own destiny.